stories beyond imagination.
The city of Lumeris lived beneath a colossal dome of glass and plasma, shielding millions from the toxic storms of the outside world. Within its neon-lit corridors, people bartered not in gold or grain, but in data, plasma cells, and rare fragments of lost technology. Amidst the chaos of drones, buzzing, and holograms flickering, a humble man sat cross-legged beside a small stall. His clothing was plain, stitched from recycled synth fabric, with no glowing insignias or embedded tech like the merchants around him. What drew passers-by, however, were not his wares, but the spectacle they created. Small devices, patched together from forgotten circuitry, released orbs of pure light, holographic bubbles. They floated gently in the air, shimmering with galaxies inside them, each a tiny cosmos of shifting colors. Children laughed and reached out, their hands glowing when the bubbles drifted too close, though adults dismissed the show as nothing more than clever tricks. Yet beneath the shimmer, there was something strangely alive about these bubbles, something beyond simple code or mechanics. And on this day, destiny itself would walk straight into his stall, cloaked in royalty, accompanied by the iron shadow of drones. A sudden shift of air pressure warned the crowd before their eyes caught up. From above, engines hummed, a royal hover carriage descending, wrapped in shields of golden plasma. The marketplace fell silent as every merchant lowered their eyes and silenced their drones. The floating chariot landed softly, its neon glass panels glowing with the emblem of the crown, an ancient sigil now digitized into holographic fire. Guard drones in black armor descended alongside, scanning the crowd with crimson lenses. Each face was measured, mapped, and cleared before the doors of the hover carriage opened. The air seemed to hold its breath. People bowed, heads lowered, while whispers rippled through the neon-lit streets. Few ever saw the Queen's child, fewer still in the chaotic Undercity. Yet there she was, stepping into the glow, a little girl in luminous nano-fabric robes, her digital tiara flickering faintly above her head. But instead of majesty, her face carried something shocking: tears. The child's sobs echoed unnaturally in the silence, as if the entire dome amplified her pain. No one dared move, no one dared breathe, except him, the man with the bubbles. The humble man rose slowly, feeling the hot scan of the drones upon his skin. To step closer to the child was madness, perhaps even suicide. And yet, when he saw her tears glowing like liquid crystals, something inside him stirred. Ignoring the murmurs of the crowd, he bent down, retrieved one of his patch devices, and activated it. From its cracked emitter bloomed a single bubble of radiant light. It rose softly into the neon air, colors swirling like miniature galaxies trapped in liquid glass. The child gasped, her tears halting for just a moment. She extended a trembling hand, her holographic tiara sparking as if reacting to the strange sphere. When her fingers brushed the bubble instead of bursting, it pulsed, casting a glow across her face, washing away sorrow with awe. The crowd dared not look up, but they felt it, the subtle shift, the way her laughter replaced her sobs. The Queen's daughter, smiling again because of a peasant's trick. The spell was short-lived. A sharp command from the guards fractured the moment. From every angle, armored enforcers in sleek nanosuits advanced, their plasma rifles humming with restrained power. Their glowing visors reflected the image of the man standing before the princess, bubbles still swirling like ghostly galaxies. "Step away from the air!" one barked, his voice processed through metallic filters. The crowd shrank further, terrified of being caught in the path of royal wrath. The man raised his hands, palms empty, but the little princess pressed herself against him, refusing to move. A bubble drifted between them and a soldier, its glow reflecting in the crimson lenses of his visor. The soldier hesitated, momentarily distracted, and that was when the world itself seemed to shift. The hover carriage doors slid open, glowing hydraulics hissing softly as a new figure emerged. Silence deepened into reverence and fear. The Queen stepped down, not clad in velvet, robes of old legend, but in a regal exogown woven from shifting nanotech threads. Her crown was no mere ornament. It was a lattice of energy, a neural construct pulsing with light, connected to the city's very systems. Her gaze alone silenced the drones as her boots touched the neon pavement. She moved with a stillness that held both grace and danger, her eyes glowing faintly from the data streams embedded within. She saw her daughter smiling, clutching at the ragged man's hand. She saw the bubbles, still floating, still glowing with impossible beauty. And for the first time in many years, the Queen did not give an immediate command. The Queen's silence pressed harder than any command could. The guards froze, waiting for orders, their rifles half raised, unsure whether to strike or stand down. The little princess tugged on her mother's nanotech gown, her bright eyes fixed on the humble man beside her. "Mother," she whispered, her voice trembling but clear enough for all to hear. "He makes the stars." The words rippled through the crowd like a secret exposed, a prophecy spoken in innocence. The Queen lowered her gaze, her neural crown flickering as if conflicted. To her, everything was measured in data streams, tactical value and calculated threats. Yet here, her daughter, her only heir, clung to a stranger from the Undercity. And it wasn't fear in her eyes. It was joy. The Queen studied the bubbles, and for a fraction of a second, her sharp composure faltered. The man, still kneeling, bowed his head, expecting punishment. But instead of wrath, he heard her voice, calm, cold, yet laced with something he couldn't quite name. "Rise." The marketplace stirred as the Queen's words carried across the neon dome. No one had expected mercy. Fewer still expected curiosity. "What are these devices?" she asked, her voice amplified through invisible speakers, yet directed only at him. The man hesitated, searching for the right words. How could he explain? They weren't devices in the simple sense, more like fragments of living code, bound to fragments of lost matter. He had discovered them years ago, hidden deep in the ruins of old Earth technology. To most, they were just toys, but he had felt something different, something alive within the orbs. "They are fragments of light, Majesty," he answered carefully. "Echoes of the universe. They calm what machines cannot." The Queen tilted her head, analyzing his words as though scanning them for truth. Her daughter, impatient, tugged again on her gown. "Can he come with us?" she asked. The marketplace gasped as the Queen's eyes hardened, then softened, before she replied with a single word that changed everything. "Yes." The guards shifted uneasily but obeyed. Within moments, the humble man found himself ushered into the royal hover carriage, the hum of its engines swallowing the noise of the marketplace. The princess sat across from him, her tiny hands clutching the last glowing bubble he had created. It drifted between her palms, pulsing gently like a living star. Outside the window, the Undercity blurred into streaks of neon as the vehicle ascended. Through multiple levels of the dome, towers of chrome and glass reached toward the sky, their holographic advertisements flickering across artificial clouds. The man had never seen this world from within. It was the realm of royals, elites, and the untouchable few. The princess giggled, releasing the bubble and watching it float freely inside the cabin, its glow painting her cheeks with starlight. The Queen, seated opposite, did not smile, but her gaze lingered on the light longer than necessary. To her, this was more than amusement. This was anomaly. The hover carriage pierced the upper levels of Lumeris, passing through shimmering gates of plasma until it reached the palace. Unlike the stone fortresses of ancient history, this was a cathedral of steel, glass, and code. Its spires stretched like blades into the dome's inner sky, glowing with the pulse of data streams that connected it to every system of the city. The palace was alive, its walls shifting with holographic inscriptions, its gates guarded by drones larger than tanks, each armed with plasma cannons. The man's breath caught as he stepped into its vast hall. Floors of mirrored obsidian reflected the starscape projected on the ceiling above, as though they were walking in space itself. Holographic banners shimmered with the crown's sigil, an ancient flame, digitized into living fire. The princess skipped ahead, her laughter echoing in the chamber, bubbles drifting after her. The Queen followed, silent, her steps measured, her neural crown linking instantly with the palace systems. And behind them trailed the man, small, insignificant, yet holding something even this empire of steel could not manufacture. At the heart of the palace lay the throne chamber, a vast circular hall, its walls alive with flowing streams of code. Projected in endless neon glyphs, the throne itself floated above a platform of magnetic fields, crafted from crystalline alloy, shimmering with an otherworldly glow. It was not just a seat of power. It was a nexus, a control point that allowed the queen to command the entire city. The man hesitated at the threshold, his simple sandals squeaking faintly against the polished obsidian floor. Here he felt the weight of centuries. The eyes of rulers long digitized into memory banks still watching from the streams of code. The queen ascended her throne with effortless grace, her exogown merging with the nanotech seat as though she and it were one. The princess climbed onto the dais beside her mother, holding her glowing bubble like a royal jewel. The queen's gaze pierced the man, analyzing not just his body but his very essence, scanning for weakness, for secrets. "You," she said finally, her voice carrying across the chamber like a blade, "are not ordinary. Tell me what you carry within these lights." The man's hands trembled as he stood before the throne of circuits. Around him, data streams coiled like serpents, projections of codes and battle schematics flickering across the walls. The queen's gaze was unwavering, her neural crown glowing brighter as she synced with the palace intelligence. "These orbs," she repeated, her tone sharp yet curious. "They are not toys. They are not magic. What are they?" He swallowed, searching for words. "They are fragments of resonance, Majesty, pieces of energy that once held stars together. I found them buried beneath the ruins of old Earth's data vaults. They respond to emotion, not commands." The chamber fell silent. The princess clutched her bubble tighter, as if to prove his words true. The queen frowned, but her voice softened, just slightly. "Emotion has no place in war," she declared. Yet the flicker in her eyes betrayed her. For the first time, the perfect logic of her rule had been challenged not by weapons, but by wonder. Far above them, unseen by the queen, data-cloaked figures observed the scene from hidden nodes within the palace system. They were the silent ministers, an elite council of advisors, who rarely appeared in person. They despised weakness, and they saw danger in the queen's hesitation. To them, these bubbles were not miracles but threats, unpredictable code that could destabilize their iron control. Through encrypted whispers they debated, their synthetic voices cold as steel. "This anomaly must be destroyed," one said. "The queen wavers," another hissed. "Her daughter corrupts her judgment." The man, unaware of their presence, felt only the weight of the queen's eyes on him. Yet already, unseen enemies had marked him for erasure. And in that moment, the fragile bond he shared with the child became not just a curiosity, but a weapon his enemies would gladly exploit. The following night, the palace halls glittered with streams of neon, but behind closed doors, shadows thickened. The queen had retired to her private chamber, her mind tethered to endless war simulations. But the princess had slipped away, barefoot, her small figure darting between holographic statues and drone patrols. She found the man in a modest chamber assigned to him, sitting cross-legged with orbs drifting lazily around him. Her eyes lit up as he shaped the bubbles into constellations, weaving them into galaxies above her head. "They're alive," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Alive in a way machines can't understand." Her laughter filled the chamber, pure and unfiltered, and for a moment, the sterile walls of the palace felt human again. But beyond those walls, the silent ministers tightened their grip, watching every move with predatory patience. The princess did not care. She had chosen her rebellion, one made not of politics or steel, but of light. The silent ministers convened in the dark heart of the palace, where physical bodies no longer mattered and only code remained. They appeared as shifting masks of light, their digital voices echoing in a hollow chamber of pure data. "The queen is compromised," one intoned. "The man must be eliminated," another added, "and the child must be corrected before corruption spreads." But among them, one minister hesitated, its mask flickering. What if the resonance can be weaponized? A pause fell, heavy with the hunger of ambition. They decided not to destroy the anomaly immediately. Instead, they would test it. They would provoke the queen, and in her hesitation, reveal whether she was fit to rule or ripe for replacement. Their plan unfurled like poison through the data streams, unseen by the palace above. The next day, the queen summoned the man once more, this time before her court of ministers, physical projections of the faceless council. The chamber was alive with surveillance drones, their lenses glowing red. "You will demonstrate," the queen commanded, her tone unreadable. The man hesitated, feeling the trap close around him. Still, he lifted his hands, summoning the bubbles into existence. They glowed brighter than ever, filling the chamber with galaxies of light, cascading across the throne, reflecting in the polished obsidian. The princess gasped, clapping with delight, her laughter breaking the tension. But the ministers remained unmoved, their voices cutting through the beauty like blades. "Illusion," one spat. "Weakness," another sneered. The queen sat silent, her face unreadable. But inside her chest, something warred, logic against awe, duty against heart. And the man realized then that his trial was not for the bubbles. It was for the soul of a queen. That night, whispers spread like viruses through the palace networks. The silent ministers declared the man a dangerous anomaly, unfit to exist within their ordered empire. But among the servants and soldiers, a different rumor grew. The stranger's light was unlike anything they had seen. A beauty that felt free. The princess, restless in her chambers, stared at the glowing orb she had hidden under her pillow. It pulsed softly, responding to her heartbeat. She thought of her mother's steel voice, the ministers' cold faces, the endless drone of war. Then she thought of the man's gentle eyes, of the galaxies he made dance in her hands. For the first time in her short life, she dreamed not of battle or conquest, but of worlds alive with color. And in that dream, she saw herself standing not beside a throne, but beneath stars she had never touched. The following day, the palace was plunged into controlled chaos. An alarm blared through the neon halls. An enemy fleet had breached the outer defenses. The queen's ministers insisted it was time to unleash the full force of her army. Yet the queen hesitated, her eyes drifting to the man. He frowned, sensing something wrong. His orbs glowed faintly, warning him. "This is no invasion," he whispered. "This is a fabrication." But his voice was drowned out in the storm of commands. Drones mobilizing, weapons primed. The silent ministers had staged it all. A phantom war coded into the palace's very systems. Their aim was simple: force the queen to choose between her throne and the light the stranger carried. As explosions echoed outside the palace, walls, illusions rendered with terrifying realism, the ministers smiled from behind their masks of data. The trap had been sprung. The princess burst into the throne room, clutching her glowing orb to her chest. "Mother!" she cried, her voice trembling but fierce. "He speaks the truth. The battle is not real." The court gasped. No one had ever dared to shout in the queen's presence. The ministers hissed, their holographic forms flickering with anger. "Silence the child," one ordered. But the queen's hand lifted, halting the guards. For a heartbeat, she looked not at her council, not at her generals, but at her daughter. The orb pulsed, filling the chamber with light. The man's voice followed, calm but unyielding. "Majesty, your enemies are not outside these walls. They are here, feeding fear, drowning your empire in endless war." The queen's fingers tightened around her scepter, torn between the daughter she loved and the system she had built. And in that tension, history teetered. The chamber erupted into chaos. Ministers shouted, their voices layered with static. Guards raised plasma spears, unsure whom to obey. The queen rose, her crown blazing, her voice like thunder. "Enough!" she roared. The throne room trembled as the palace intelligence bent to her command. But the ministers countered, their data streams lashing out like digital whips, corrupting the walls, darkening the light. The man shielded the princess, his bubbles spiraling outward, forming a barrier of shimmering galaxies. Energy collided, cold logic against, living resonance, filling the chamber with a storm of light and shadow. The queen stood at the center, torn apart by two worlds. The sterile empire of her ministers and the fragile, radiant humanity her daughter begged her to remember. The fracture widened, and the choice could no longer be delayed. The queen lowered her scepter. Her voice shook, not with fear, but with something older, buried deep beneath years of war. "I see now," she whispered. "We have built an empire of silence, machines without soul, power without joy." Her ministers shrieked, their holograms destabilizing. "You betray us!" they cried. But the queen ignored them, turning instead to her daughter. "If emotion is weakness," she said, "then let weakness be our strength." With a sweep of her hand, she commanded the palace intelligence to sever the minister's access. Sparks erupted, their forms glitching, unraveling into static. The man's bubbles swirled brighter, flooding the chamber with radiant galaxies. The queen reached out, her crown dimming, her eyes wet. "Show me," she said to him. "Show me what lies beyond fear." The ministers, desperate, unleashed their final strike. From the corrupted systems rose monstrous constructs, digital, beasts of claws and fire, roaring with synthetic rage. They lunged at the queen, the princess, the man, but the orbs pulsed in answer, each bubble bursting into constellations that wrapped around the monsters, dissolving them into harmless light. The chamber cracked, circuits overloading, walls splitting under the storm of energy. The queen staggered but stood tall, her daughter gripping her hand. Together they faced the unraveling empire. For the first time, the queen was not shielded by armies or crowns. She was shielded by wonder, by her child's laughter, and the fragile courage of a stranger. And as the palace collapsed, a new foundation began to rise. When the storm ended, silence fell. The throne room was ruined, its walls scorched, its circuits dead. The ministers were gone, erased like old code. In their place, the man's bubbles drifted gently, glowing against the ruins. The queen fell to her knees, exhausted. The princess knelt beside her, placing the last glowing orb into her mother's hand. It pulsed, soft and alive. The queen stared at it, and for the first time in her reign, she smiled, not the smile of power, but of peace. The man bowed deeply. "Majesty, the choice is yours. To rebuild what was, or to build something new." The queen closed her eyes, listening to the hum of the orb, the laughter of her daughter, the faint echoes of stars waiting to be born. Her answer came not as command, but as promise. No more silence. No more endless war. Let there be light. Across the empire, the minister's absence was felt instantly. Systems once governed by fear flickered uncertainly, awaiting new commands. Some outposts rebelled, unwilling to embrace change. Others wept in relief as the endless cycle of battle reports ceased. Word spread of the queen's defiance, how she had stood against her own council and chosen her. Daughters' laughter over the cold counsel of war. To many it was heresy, to others salvation. In the underbelly of the empire, surviving fragments of the ministers whispered, plotting to reclaim control. But they no longer commanded the throne. Their shadows were exiled, scattered, weaker than ever. And in their place, something fragile but unstoppable had taken root. In the days that followed, the queen discarded her old crown of steel and circuits. In its place, she wore the resonance orb, reshaped into a crystalline circlet that pulsed with living light. The people called it the Crown of Dawn. The princess became its guardian, walking beside her mother not as heir to war, but as a beacon of hope. The man remained in the palace, teaching not commands, but wonder, showing children how to summon galaxies in their palms, reminding soldiers that they were more than weapons. Slowly, the empire began to heal. The cold steel of its halls warmed with laughter, and where once there were only drones and war banners, there were now gardens of light. Years later, legends told of the daylight returned to the empire. Children played with glowing orbs in the streets, shaping their own constellations. The queen, older now, sat not on a throne but among her people, her daughter grown into a leader radiant with compassion. The man was gone, vanished into the stars, but his gift remained. The bubbles drifted across the skies of 100 worlds, each one a fragment of wonder, reminding all who looked up that power was not in silence or fear, but in the fragile beauty of joy. And so the empire endured, not as a machine of war, but as a constellation of hearts, forever bound by light. The story of the bubbles was never forgotten, for they were eternal, soft galaxies carrying the memory of the day. A queen chose love over fear, and reshaped the stars themselves.